Deus miserere, Deus miserere, o Gesù bone tu illi part. Deus miserere, a te clamantes, exaudi Christi, lentium voces audibere. Deus miserere,
So we'll start off with Ashraf Adeel from the University of Pennsylvania, who'll be talking to us about transcendence in Jaspers, Kant, and Plotinus.
Thank you. Appreciate. Thank you all for making it convenient to come over this morning. I am trying to, grapple with an issue. On the one hand, we have this settled understanding that Kant believed in what we call autonomy of reason. And this autonomy implies, in a certain sense, its self-sufficiency. So human reason is self-sufficient in its ability to give us the knowledge of the world as well as the knowledge of the moral world. On the other hand, people like Jaspers and Plotinus, they believe in transcendence. So I was trying to explore whether there is a possibility of linking these three thinkers with each other through the idea of the autonomy of reason. My remarks will be basically giving us a very brief outline of what Jaspers takes existence and transcendence to be, and then I'll be talking a bit about the autonomy of reason, followed by Plotinus's idea of the transcendent or transcendence of the one. Now Jaspers famously says this, about existence. Now his 3 volumes, philosophy, draw a distinction between existence on the one hand, at least translators like Ashton, they distinguish existence from existence. And existence is the key concept related to transcendence. So he thinks that, he says, Jaspers says that I am existence if I do not become an object for myself. That means that part of me as a subject, which I cannot objectify and turn into an object, that part is, kind of my existence. I exist as an object, but my existence is something that transcends my ability to make myself into an object. So that aspect of my subjectivity, which is not objectifiable, is existence, and this is actually for Jaspers a kind of non-objectivity. It's a kind of subjectivity. It's a possibility. And in that sense, it is freedom. And and it is, although he does not identify existence with transcendence, existence is rooted in transcendence. And as far as transcendence is concerned, concerned, he says, that when I try to, grasp being qua being, it always escapes my grasp. Therefore, being qua being in that sense transcends my ability to mentally grasp it. And so I cannot have its knowledge like I can have the knowledge of certain empirical experiences of the world. And in that sense, it is being qua being has this transcendent dimension. So an existence, my existence as a human being, is rooted in this transcendent, although it is not identical with this transcendent. Without me being unobjectifiable as a subject, I will not be a human existence, and insofar as I am unobjectifiable as a human being, I am in that sense a human whose existence is rooted in transcendence, although existence and transcendence are not the same. Existence, of course, an authentic existence involves decisions, action, and that obviously is based in free possibility of free action. Now, as far as transcendence is concerned, we may not even be aware of it. When we want to think about it, it turns out that it is unthinkable. Transcendence is, as this dimension of unthinkability to it. And for example, and also my transcendence, he says, is transcendence is not just mine alone. It's a kind of universally, it's a kind of a universal insofar as it is related to being qua being, which always transcends my effort to grasp it. Now, so this is the transcendent dimension of being, and of course, my existence as a human being is rooted in this transcendence. It is this existence rooted in transcendence which makes it possible for me to avoid becoming an object among the objects of the world. I am existence insofar as I am distinct from the existence of all the objects in the world. So and this possibility of existence rooted in transcendence is what makes me a human being who is not just an object. So this possibility actually helps me, saves me from becoming void, becoming an object. It saves my individuality, it saves my independence, it saves my authenticity, it saves my freedom, and insofar as I exercise that freedom in my life, in my decisions, in my actions, I am an authentic individual, and insofar as I do not do that, I can become voided, I can become just existence, or just an object among objects. So the key thing from the point of view of morality, authenticity for Jaspers is that we try to thrive upon that possibility of our existence which is rooted in transcendence. And that is what is the source of authentic existence in the world. That is what distinguishes us from the objects in the world. We are not like chairs and tables. And materialist philosophers, they say that all that we are just bags and atoms, bags of atoms. I'm just a bag of atoms. Well, that is not the case as far as I'm not just a bag of objects, objective entities. There is this subjective dimension to me as well. Kierkegaard, the founder of existentialism, famously said that truth is subjectivity, and I think Karl Jaspers is building upon that theme in his insistence that human existence is subjective, or that part of my subjectivity which cannot be objectified, and human subjectivity is also rooted in transcendence. So this is a continuation of, in a sense, the Kierkegaardian themes in Jaspers. Now, this is also something that is obviously directly related with the concept of transcendence in Plotinus. Plotinus believes that the measure of reality of a thing is directly related with the measure of unity in that thing. An army, for example, if it does not have a unity, it is not an army. Similarly, for other objects, physical objects or social entities, all of them, insofar as they are real, they actually have a certain measure of unity to them. So unity is the key concept in Plotinus, and as we move through various beings and move upwards to the highest and ultimate and absolute, that ultimate must be just one, must have absolute unity to it. And absolute unity transcends all efforts to turn it into an object. This one cannot be known as an object. No categories of thought, no conceptions apply to this one, because it's an absolute unity, and as far as our effort to think things or know things, our efforts to know things or think through them are concerned, as soon as we try to think through an object, our thought is already involved in manifold. It is already a complex rather than simplex. But ultimate one, the transcendent one, is just complete and absolute unity. So it ever transcends our effort at grasping it as an object. And in that sense, it is a completely completely unthinkable. It is totally inconceivable, and its inconceivability and unthinkability is its hallmark. And in that sense, for human beings or human souls ultimately to be able to reach out to it is actually something that can happen very, very rarely through, according to Plotinus, developing kind of a likeness in our souls, likeness to the one or to the transcendent. And this likeness, this ability for developing this kind of discipline and likeness is related with the power that has been bestowed upon us by the transcendent one in eternity. Everything emanates and flows from it, but it is beyond everything. When we talk about it as a cause, from it emanates everything. Everything is derived from it, but it is not in the set of its derivatives. It's beyond that set. And the only way we can come in contact with this transcendent one is through, in rare moments, becoming identical and one with it by slipping away totally from our otherness, from the transcendent one. And these spiritual moments obviously are the mystical moments, and they are very rare. Now, if you take this and compare it with Kant, now Kant believes that reason has, various functions. The basic function of reason is to bring all our empirical knowledge into a teleological unity, and similarly bring all our, all actions undertaken by our practical reason, chosen by our practical reason, under a teleological unity. And for that purpose, reason needs its ideas, its idea of God, its idea of immortality of soul, and its idea of the world. But the idea, the concept of ideas of reason in Kant is defined as an idea is something which is a conception without a corresponding entity to it. There's no corresponding entity to it. So reason has the idea of God, it has the idea of soul, it has the idea of world, but there are no corresponding entities to them. And reason unifies all the empirical knowledge under the concept of brings all empirical knowledge under the teleological unity as far as nature is concerned, or as far as morality is concerned. And self-sufficiency and autonomy of reason consists in two things: just in its universality, as well as its complete internal freedom. Reason is not reason if it is forced into a judgment. Rational judgments have to be internally and completely free. So in a sense, we can say that reason, autonomous reason, is self-sufficient, and nothing transcends it as far as our empirical world is concerned, empirical knowledge is concerned. The ideas of God and immortality of soul and the world, they are produced by reason under its regulative principle that do not correspond to any reality, and hence there is no mystical or transcendent dimension to them, although they are transcendental conditions for the knowledge of the world and for the knowledge of for our practical action, moral action in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your nice lecture. So my question is this: let's say, in how far is Plotinus, according to Jaspers, a mystic thinker? Let's say Jaspers, although he is a transcendental philosopher, and so says that you cannot prove God, he is not a speculative thinker as Hegel. He is in between. And so mysticism, there is no mystical knowledge of God. From the other side, mysticism is, according to Jaspers, a real existential possibility. It's authentic human possibility. So, but like the Western way of thinking is a human possibility, the difference is this, as Jaspers said often: the mystics want to transcend the world, and that is possible. But we in the West, we do not want to transcend the world. We want to live within the world. Let's say, and how does Plotinus fit into this scheme? Is he a mystic that wants to transcend the world, or is he a mystic, according to Jaspers, that gives a way into the world?
I think Plotinus basically is in our rare moments when we achieve identity with the one, with the transcendent, we are transformed. And as moral beings, this divine touch transforms our character. And when we return with the riches of that experience. And it is that experience, the riches of that experience, that helps us live in the world and through the world. Thank you for a very important question. Thank you.
I was wondering how Kant's autonomous reason relates to this, because it says exactly the opposite from Plotinus in some sense, and valorizes more than necessary a limitation of freedom, since the logos has all these modalities and categories and so on.
Thank you. Yes, Kant, some of the commentators of Jaspers, they believe that, the 3 volumes of philosophy by Jaspers, it's a Hegelian and a Kantian project. And when Kant says that metaphysics in the traditional sense is impossible, that conclusion is slightly modified by Jaspers by saying that metaphysics is the study of transcendence, and this study does not end up giving us a dogmatic knowledge of God, or it doesn't bring us to an entity. It just, theological pursuit of God is just pursuit of transcendence. We don't reach a goal. So in that sense, some people have argued that Jaspers' project is a kind of a refinement of Kantian project. And I was trying to see if, let us say, we take the idea of the autonomy of reason, and we also look at Kant's analysis of the ideas of reason and the role reason plays in our knowledge of the world and in our morality. And he brings, by the way, theoretical reason as well as practical reason under the categorical imperative by claiming that both have to act upon rules that are universalizable. Neither the theoretical reason nor practical reason can, adopt different rules on the same issues. It won't be reason if it will discriminate between issues and cases in that sense. So, practical and theoretical reason are unified under the idea of universalizability, and then the claim is made that reason is self-sufficient. So, for our moral guidance, the ideas of reason, the idea of God, as the ultimate judge, is considered as necessary and important by Kant. However, people like Plotinus, and Jaspers, they believe that, the idea of God is transcendent in the sense, in a certain specific sense, whereas reason does not, for Kant, have anything that transcends it. There is this noumena, but noumena is unknowable, and it is a transcendental condition for our view of the world. It is not something that transcends reason. So, similarly, idea of God is a transcendental condition for the teleological unity of the world, and idea of the immortality of the soul is similarly a transcendental condition for teleological unity of the world, for our moral activity in the world. But that does not mean that this idea is transcendence. There is nothing corresponding to these ideas of reasons in Kant. And so that I thought, the claim that some people make that this Jaspers project is a Kantian project, that I thought needed to be explored, and I tried to explore it in the context of the concept of the autonomy and self-sufficiency of reason for human understanding of nature and for human morality.
As Jaspers lived through quite strong changes during his lifetime in Germany, I was thinking, is his concept of transcendence all the same all through? Or are there remarkable changes? Is it continuity? Is it a continuity within the concept, or can you see fundamental changes, leaps, or something happening with the concept?
To the best of my understanding, I think it's a continuous concept, this refinement and development, but no jumps. And so I don't really see more than one concept of transcendence in his works. But you know, I might be wrong. I might have missed something. My understanding is that no, the concept of transcendence is continuous. The volumes of philosophy that they came out in 1932, I guess, and those gave us one continuous concept of transcendence. I mean, he had a volatile life, obviously. Those were very difficult and dark times. It appears to me that this is the concept of authentic existence and the concept of transcendence. They are continuous, and in a way, they form the bedrock of not only his philosophy, existentialist philosophy, but also his life.
Now we're going to hear Pavlos Michaelides from the University of Nicosia speak about Plotinus's one at the interplay of nous, intellectus, being and existence.
Jaspers and Plotinus, transcendence, freedom, and human existence in modernity. And I start with a few quotes. First, Jaspers. The nameless which could be grasped would never have been the nameless. The anonymous, the nameless, is not only the true being of man, which tends to vanish in dispersion, but also the true not being, which seems to claim the whole realm of life. And then Plotinus, Ennead 5, let us speak of the nous in this way. First, invoking God himself, not in spoken words, but stretching our soul in prayer toward him, since this is how we can pray to him, alone to the alone. I start straight ahead. I'm interested essentially how these two philosophers, a modern and an ancient, in a sense, are totally focused on these three concepts: transcendence, freedom, and existence, and how this, for future philosophers, is key and the nucleus of the matter. Jaspers on transcendence, freedom, and human existence in modernity. Jaspers affirms the Greek interpretation of philosophos, the lover of wisdom, as accurately reflecting the essence of philosophy, which extends its comprehensive investigation to the entirety of existence. Philosophy pertains to man as man, with a truth which, wherever it is manifesting, moves us more deeply than any scientific knowledge. The certainty sought in philosophy is not the objective scientific kind, uniform for all minds. Instead, it is an inner certainty involving a person's totality. Philosophy means, according to Jaspers, being on the way, reflecting the questing nature of philosophers to challenge answers with further questions. The continuous pursuit of philosophical wisdom symbolizes humanity's journey through time and offers the potential for profound satisfaction and exalted moments of perfection. Realizing man's historical essence reveals being as such, rather than fully capturing perfection through fixed beliefs, dogmas, or doctrines, or articles of faith, etc. As such, philosophical activity aims to comprehend the transcendental reality within the scope of human experiences. Jaspers criticizes criticism of modernity strictly revolves around the deterioration of genuine selfhood and the pursuit of authentic freedom. In today's purely secular world, human activities often subject individuals driven by complex political power that fail to comprehend the overall situation. Blind or unconscious will and the lack of meaning govern and diminish human affairs, fragmenting them. Given the increased societal pressures, individuals struggle to recognize and exercise their freedom to act and are less motivated by worldly responsibilities. Human action frequently results in superficiality, division, and imitation, hindering authentic decision-making. However, making decisions and taking action in the present creates the foundation for future activities and self-realization. To act authentically, one must engage in genuine philosophical thinking, which requires foresight, comprehensive understanding, and awareness, and the infinite realm of possibilities remains open beyond immediate reality. Anything less leads to chaos, distractiveness, and disintegration, resulting in outrage and irritable activity. Powerless modern individuals often follow predetermined paths, focusing on optimal methods for rationalized provision of life's necessities, which can only anticipate frustration when realizing that the goal is unknown at the end. However, that very unknowability, according to Jaspers, of the goal is the place revealed to him alone, who despite everything can fix his gaze on transcendence. 60 pages back, Jaspers says, "A knowledge of my world provides the sole means whereby I can, first of all, become aware of the extent of the possible, secondly, shape sound plans and form effective resolves, thirdly, acquire the outlooks and the ideas that will enable me, a philosopher, to interpret human life as a manifestation of transcendence." Transcendence and freedom involve acknowledging one's lack of self-sufficiency. The individual's will, which is not absolute and independent, cannot achieve freedom. Being granted to oneself is also prone to failure. However, when genuinely being oneself, one realizes that existence is not solely one's own doing. An unknowable transcendent bestows the openness and freedom of existence. This marvel surpasses human understanding and encompasses the yearning for the unknown and questioning at the limits. All this is philosophy, questioning at the boundary. Therefore, freedom and liberty cannot be coerced or compelled. Instead, they assert that the certainty of God's existence comes from direct experience with the Godhead. In Jaspers, the certainty of God has the force of one's existence. God, freedom, and existence are inseparable. He writes, "Man's freedom is his existence. I can have certainty of the Godhead not as a content of science, but as the presence for existence. Otherwise, God exists to an extent I authentically become through freedom, and God's existence is ascertained only as openness to existence. The self undergoes the highest form of freedom when directly connected with transcendent unity. Conversely, without experiencing the miracle of selfhood, I need no relation to God. I am content with the empirical existence of nature, many gods and demons, and so on." Continuing, Jasper says, "But the illumination of our existence as freedom does not prove the existence of God. It merely points, one might say, to the area in which certainty of his existence is possible. The thought that strives for compelling certainty cannot realize its aim in proofs of God's existence. But the failure of thought does not result in nothingness. It points to that which resolves into inexhaustible, forever questioning, comprehensive consciousness of God." Anyway, accordingly, philosophy grants us not an unattainable knowledge of God, but a comprehensive consciousness of the Godhead. The authentic reality, God, is accessible to existence through an innate orientation toward the ultimate. Faith in God is immediate, independent, and direct without mediation or intermediaries. We achieve life's true fulfillment by realizing God as the ultimate reality. We apprehend the proposition is by transcending the world of objects and discovering authentic existence beyond historical realities. Everyone is responsible for themselves and must not evade responsibility by renouncing freedom under the guise of seeking it. Therefore, one must owe decisions and chosen paths to one's self. God's majestic wisdom does not actuate an absolute authority, and we are not puppets of God's will. Instead, God's wisdom, Jaspers says, wanted us to be free. Jaspers states that the mystic is immersed in the comprehensive, but what is communicable resists subject-object dichotomy. Thus, mystics historically struggle to convey the essence of these experiences. Clear consciousness can never fully capture the entirety of that source. Philosopher mystics can only articulate what assumes object form. The rest remains incommunicable. Nonetheless, this ineffable experience in the backdrop imbues philosophical ideas, ontological, metaphysical, etc., with actual content and meaning. Accordingly, consciousness carries an inexhaustible significance for those who experience union with the Godhead, representing true awakening. On the other hand, conventional subject-object consciousness resembles a state of slumber. Jaspers, captivated by Plotinus, regarded him as the greatest mystical philosopher of the West, due to his grand and elevated vision of self-unification. Referencing the great mystic, he writes, "Often when I awaken to myself from the slumber of the body, I behold a wondrous beauty. I believe firmly that I belong to a better and a higher world. I call forth the most glorious life within me. I have become one with the Godhead." Regarding philosophy in modernity, Jaspers observes that despite the immense progress in medicine since the time of Hippocrates, we cannot confidently assert that we have surpassed the philosophical depth of Plato. Our advancements have mainly been in scientific knowledge, not extending to profound philosophical insights. Unlike science, philosophy springs from a different source that involves our entire being and explores the totality of existence rather than focusing solely on objective facts. Although philosophical thinking integrates the latest scientific discoveries, its fundamental truth arises from contemplation beyond the subject-object, emerging whenever humans achieve awareness. Plotinus's enigmatic one and the twofold unity of self-identity and otherness. According to Plotinus, individual souls enmeshed in physical existence have descended from the higher spheres of nous into the states of division. Simultaneously, however, they are identical and distinct. Each soul retains its singularity while collectively forming a unified whole. One source produces many souls resembling the intellects within nous, mind, intellectus. They are separated yet remain undivided. Plotinus' conception of self-knowledge is equally daunting and unveils the cosmic dignity and might of the enlightened soul. He ascertains that within heavenly nous, each person is both themselves and one with all. So by knowing himself knows all, and by knowing all knows himself. Continuing, in the world of nous, Plotinus says, each item is itself, yet is simultaneously everything else. All things there are heaven. Earth and sea and animals and plants and men are heaven. Each has everything else in itself and sees everything in every other. For all are everywhere, and everyone is all. The glory is unbounded. For each of them is great because even the small is great. The sun, there is all the stars, and each star is the sun and all the others. When the soul approaches its holy essence, the veil that separates our awareness from the things contemplated by the part of our soul above dissolves, uniting the earthly and celestial or heavenly aspects. Every soul understands its interdependence, direct connection, communication with all other souls, intellects, beings, and existence. Further, when the soul's contemplative gaze focuses on any aspect of multiple realities, it unifies with it. Abiding near the soul embodies a twofold unity of self-identity and otherness. Maintaining distinct identity and fullness, the soul perceives the all-unifying totality within every form. However, the primordial presence of the boundless one extends beyond all constraints of self-identity and otherness and is a state of expansive freedom. However, let us inquire from the outside. Drawing from Plato's Parmenides and Republic, Plotinus proclaims the one, the Platonic summum bonum, the good itself, is a beginausias, transcends both being and essence. He writes, there must be something simple before all things, other than all things which come from after it, existing by itself, not mixed with the things which derive from it, and all the same able to be present in a different way to these other things, being really one and not different, being and then one. It is false even to say of it that it is one, and there is no concept or knowledge of it. It is indeed also said to be beyond being. In primordial simplicity, the one remains distinct from all things, surpassing everything in dignity and power. Hence, the non-dual one, transcendent and beyond description, evading all names and attributes, is most effectively approached through negative philosophical thinking by understanding what it is not, neither this nor that. In proximity, absorbed in negative contemplation, the one draws near, allowing the soul to recognize its intrinsic divine nature, or holy monad, interconnected with all existence. However, paradoxically, the one is utterly silent, neither coarse nor subtle, transcending all and one. The infinite one, beyond its comprehension, outside all coincidence and composition, complete, above any consideration, transcending nous and thought, is best accessed through contemplative intuition and prevalent mystical silence beyond language and ordinary consciousness. The suchness of apophatic silence allows the soul to unite with the boundless one in harmony with the enigmatic otherness and the cosmic expanse. Near the source, where being and thought merge, the overpowering presence erases adumbrated forms, enabling the soul to maintain its godly identity while uniting with otherness. Essentially, Plotinus reveals Plato's path, showing how to ascend through the ranks of nous, achieve the beyond being purity and nobility of the one. Mystical union with the good itself. Mystical union, which grants direct spiritual realization, harmonizes the soul through an incomprehensible silence that surpasses speech, knowledge, and understanding. Herein, the soul comprehends that silence and the unknowable underlie the world, expanse, and all experiential reality, revealing the dual unity of self-identity and otherness, the coincidentia oppositorum of being and non-being. Plotinus' inquiry of the one intends to guide those on a philosophical quest. He says, we speak and write, sending onto it the one, and awakening from words towards contemplation, as if showing the way to him who wishes to see something. Philosophical teaching extends to the road and the passage, but crucially, the vision is the work of him who has decided to see. The name one is given to the seeker, beginning with this, which is completely indicative of simplicity, may finally negate this as well, as no name is worthy of manifesting that nature. For the seeker, analogies teach us as do negations and knowledge of what comes from it, and certain steps upwards. Philosophical endeavor is crucial for the soul's ascent, guiding the seeker towards self-unification through contemplation, negation, and comprehensive understanding. Highlighting the boundlessness of the unio mystica, Plotinus writes, "The God within each of us is one and the same." Both Jaspers and Plotinus concern that transcendence and freedom require an understanding of the limitations of human knowledge and the necessity of genuine self-knowledge qua otherness and unknowability. Plotinus would agree with Jaspers' reference to Kant's statement, God's unfathomable wisdom is as admirable in what it gives, in what it grants us, and in what it denies us. In both philosophers, personal decisions and actions primarily determine human existence. Individuals must act genuinely in the here and now, as this forms the foundation for future activity. For Jaspers, individual freedom demands that each person evoke from within what no other can, allowing direct certainty of one's relation with the Godhead. The human future can only be an open possibility, aiming for transcendent freedom to modify events. In Plotinus, being set free means that souls come to the star which is in harmony with the character and power that lived and worked in them, retaining the star above them as their demon, their God. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your inspiring talk. But I missed something in it, not because of you, I think, perhaps because of Jaspers. Let's say Plotinus' idea of the many, of the one, and the fullness of the one lies at the source of the idea of creation. In Western philosophy, the one overflows into the many. And Christian philosophers in the Middle Ages always said this is not a spontaneous process, this is willed. It is by love that the one overflows into the many, and that it means creation. From the other side, Jaspers speaks about existence and a direct relation of existence to transcendence, and existence is felt, Jaspers says it often, as a kind of gift to ourselves. We are given in a certain sense to ourselves. That would presuppose, from a Christian point of view, the idea of creation too. I never hear here the idea of creation. Is this because of Jaspers? Does he use in his comparison of his thought and Kant's thought with Plotinus ever the idea of creation?
The idea of creation in the Christian sense, I think, is not really present in Jaspers. For Jaspers, transcendence is kind of a dimension of being qua being, and it's not responsible for creation of anything.
I think what you said answers already the question. There's a kind of overflowing. And in fact, with the three hypostatic hierarchies of Plotinus, there's from the one, for instance, there's overflowing all the time. But it's not overflowing because of the one, it's overflowing because of nous. Because nous creates itself. Nous separates from the one by creating itself. In Greek, it's called αυτόκλητος. nous is αυτόκλητος. It is the one that initiates the activity, and also nous in Plotinus is the one who creates the soul. Yeah, so maybe that helps a little. Yeah.
Thank you very much for an insightful presentation. And towards the end, you referred to Kant as well, which is rich in terms of implications. I just wanted to ask you for a quick comment on the difference between Kantian transcendentalism and Jaspers' idea or Plotinus's idea of transcendence.
Well, I think Jaspers called Plotinus the greatest mystic of the West for good reason. Kant seems to, and neo-Kantian thinking, for instance, Rudolf Otto, in his idea of the holy, did his Kantian training and then turned into mystery, deep mystery. And he wrote Mysterium Trementum Fascinas. And that is the key. It's in Heidegger, and Heidegger was a friend of Jaspers, and maybe they broke out a little. But there's the question of fullness, of being, and the thing in itself is unknown. But again, in Plotinus, for instance, there's always otherness. There's what you said before is wonderful. Rare moments of unity and profound exalted moments, let's say. But then those moments help us deal with life. But there is a kind of transcendence that the thing itself, in its many-sidedness, is directly experienced outside of rational categories of reason, of pure reason, and so on, which, in a sense, while Kant is profound, of course, but and has taught us so much. But freedom, there's a limit there that he puts, a self-imposed limit. But I think autonomous reason and so on, that blocks the openness which Jaspers calls expansive freedom.
Now I will read the paper of Václav Němec from Charles University, since he couldn't be here today, which is called Ascent to the One and Becoming Existence, Different Paths to Selfhood according to Plotinus and Karl Jaspers. So, what do Plotinus and Karl Jaspers have in common? A Platonic philosopher and mystic of the 3rd century, and one of the representatives of the philosophy of existence of the 20th. Given the historical and cultural distance that separates the two, it might seem that they have little in common. On closer inspection, however, we will see that there are a number of points of contact and common intellectual concerns between the two thinkers. External evidence of that is the fact that Karl Jaspers devoted a chapter to Plotinus in his book, The Great Philosophers. Jaspers does not proceed as a mere historian of philosophy who interprets the ideas of the ancient author, examines their sources, and puts them in their original context. Jaspers enters into a lively philosophical discussion with Plotinus, and in the penultimate part of his chapter on Plotinus called Critical Characteristics, he points out certain critical contradictions in Plotinus' thinking and searches for the existential meaning of his philosophical statements. In doing so, he does not hesitate to use his own philosophical terminology, as we know it from his other writings. As I will argue, the main concern of Plotinus and Jaspers' philosophies lies in the effort to overcome the alienation of the human being lost to the realm of sensible world or immanence by attaining one's true or authentic self. In his effort to overcome alienation and find his true self, a man's relationship to his divine ground or to the one or to transcendence plays a key role. For both thinkers, this concern with man's destiny and striving for his true self is inseparably connected with an ontological interest. Both are concerned with building an ontological system, clarifying the basic layers or modes of being, and showing what place human beings occupy in them. So first, Plotinus. As researchers dealing with Plotinus agree, two basic points of view or starting points can be distinguished in his thought: religious, ethical, or mystical, and ontological, cosmological. The religious, ethical, or mystical point of view refers to Plotinus' effort to activate higher faculties of the soul and to uncover its true self in uniting with its transcendent principle. The ontological, cosmological point of view is manifested in the fact that Plotinus puts his interpretation of the mystical experience into the ontological framework outlined by the ancient Platonic and Neo-Pythagorean traditions. The stages by which the human soul ascends to its divine principle are the levels of the ontological structure of the Platonic hierarchical universe. In accordance with the tradition of Platonic hierarchical polytheism, this universe is seen as a system of different degrees of divinity. The principal hypostases of Plotinus' system, the one, intellect, soul, and even the visible world as a whole, are viewed as deities of greater or lesser dignity. The basic human possibility to lose oneself or to find one's true self is given by the fact that man is a multi-dimensional being. Man is first of all a composite of soul and body. Human body is however, a more or less passive component. The moving agent of a person is his soul, which animates and shapes the individual body. As a moving and mediating principle, the soul is able to move along a scale of descent and ascent, which is the scale of distance from the first principle. Plotinus characterizes human souls as amphibians, who are compelled to live the life there and the life here. Those which are able to be more in the company of intellect live the life there more. But those whose normal condition is the opposite live more the life here below. In some passages, Plotinus talks about multiple levels or parts of the soul. The sensitive soul directed to the sensible and material world, the intellective part of the soul directed to the intelligible beings, and the discursive reason, which is in the middle between the two. One part of our soul is always directed to the intelligible realities, one to the things of this world, and one is in the middle of these. This three-dimensionality of the human soul is a basis for the possibility of choosing to live on different levels. The soul, as it were, identifies with what it turns to and thus decides the form of its existence. In Ennead 6.8, Plotinus clearly expresses the idea that the essence of every man is carried by the will, and that he decides what he is by virtue of his will and desire. In this sense, human beings, quote-unquote, create themselves. We, that is, ourself, is principal part of the soul, which Plotinus identifies with the discursive reason found in the middle between the faculty of sense perception and intellect. This principal part of the soul represents a kind of center which can direct its attention upwards or downwards and thus decide the way of living. In another and deeper sense, however, our true self is that which transcends the discursive reason. Our true self ultimately lies in living on the level of intellect, for the soul has its origin in intellect, and the hypostasis of the soul is the result of ontological degradation and separation from this origin. Therefore, only these higher degrees are the legitimate aim of the soul's orientation, and only in being directed towards them does a man become himself, while in preoccupation with lower being he loses himself to a certain extent. Even in the state of self-alienation, however, soul's higher part, without knowing it, remains always anchored to a higher level of being, and therefore an essential internal contradiction arises in it. The specific tension between the self as the center of decision-making and the true self, which the soul attains by transcending the plane of discursive thinking, constitutes the specifically dynamic nature of the soul's life. Plotinus considers the ascent of the soul, through which a person reaches his true self, as purification and liberation from multiplicity. As the soul turns to higher or deeper levels of being, it activates higher degrees of unity and self-awareness. At the same time, the soul becomes identical with these higher forms of being, transforms itself into them. The ascent to the level of intellect is the transformation of the soul into intellect. The soul becomes the part of the movement of divine intellect, which in a single, timeless, reflexive act thinks of itself and of intelligible beings in its entirety. However, the soul is able in very exceptional moments to transcend even this reflexive and intelligible layer and unite with the ultimate principle of everything, namely the one or the good. At this level, the soul no longer thinks. That is, it does not relate to something in a noetic way, but above its own reflexivity, it unites with its principle in henosis. Even this supreme act of mystical vision is a transformation of the soul into a higher form of being, that is, a transformation into the One. The soul itself becomes one. In uniting with its deepest root, thinking, quote unquote, transcends itself while realizing its highest possibility. Human soul can attain its true self only in ascending to the level of intellect, and finally in unifying with the One Self, since it originates in them. In this sense, the ascent of the soul to the higher ontological levels is the reversion to its proper place and state. Nonetheless, these states of activation of higher forms of life and transformation to higher levels of being are attainable only for individual souls in this life, only in moments of contemplation, and souls cannot dwell in them permanently. Therefore, human souls then return to the ordinary level of consciousness, but essentially transformed. The individual soul returned to ordinary life and consciousness discovers within itself a trace of divinity which makes it like God. The attainment of one's true self coincides with deification, which is, according to Plotinus, the proper goal of human life. For Plotinus, man is in some sense divine, and the object of philosophic life is to restore its proper relationship with the divine all, and in that all to come to union with its transcendent source, the One or Good. However, a person can achieve deification only because he or his soul itself is of divine origin. We now turn to Karl Jaspers. For him, the problem of becoming an authentic self is the basic issue of his philosophy. Nevertheless, Jaspers' philosophy is not a mere philosophy of existence. From the early 1930s, this philosophy is concerned with the question of being, and his elucidation of human existence is set in an ontological framework. Already, the first volume of his 3-volume philosophy opens with the question, what is being? From the beginning, Jaspers is concerned with the distinction of basic modes of being which are equally original. In his later works, this question is formulated as a question about the modes of encompassing, das Umgreifende. The basic division of the modes of the encompassing lies between the encompassing that is us and the one that is being itself, and between the immanent and transcendent modes. One of the premises on which Jaspers' account on being is based is that being cannot be exhausted solely within the boundaries of human existence, and that it does not exist only within the boundaries of immanence. For Karl Jaspers, like for Plotinus, the possibility of self-alienation and becoming an authentic self is closely related to the multidimensionality of man. Jaspers distinguishes different levels of human being that cannot be reduced to each other. He shows that when we say the pronoun I, ich, we can use this word in different meanings that correspond to different levels or dimensions of human being. Jaspers introduces 4 basic modes or levels of human being: Dasein, consciousness in general, spirit, and existence. The mentioned levels of human being belong to the basic modes of being or of the encompassing that is us. Dasein in the first approach refers to the body, or more precisely, to the vital or organic aspect of the human being. Dasein is a very basic dimension to the extent that thanks to it we are in the world at all. We are situated in space and time. We are here, da. Jaspers sometimes says that as Dasein, man is mere life, namely in the sense that he is focused primarily on the performance of vital functions and the fulfillment of vital needs. Since Dasein is the aspect of the human being most likely to be accessible to sensory experience, Jaspers also refers to it as empirical Dasein. However, it is obviously not identical only with the living body and is not limited to the physical vital aspect of a person. It is not only about being here, but being more and better and more prosperous. It is primarily characterized by permanent desires. It wants to satisfy its needs and enjoy its immediate happiness at all costs, and also to expand its possibilities and living space. The needs of Dasein include not only elementary or bodily or vital needs, but also, for example, the desire for power or social status. The effort to maintain and expand the possibilities of Dasein can thus take on forms such as the enforcing of economic, political, or personal power. It therefore does not correspond to the mere body in Plotinus' sense, but rather to the body alongside the lower parts of the soul. Consciousness in general, Bewusstsein überhaupt, refers to us as the objectively knowing subjectivity. Consciousness in general is a condition enabling that things in the world appear to us as phenomena or objects of knowledge. As consciousness in general, we know reality in a more or less identical way, while we are shown what is universally valid for knowledge. Consciousness in general is thus the domain of general or universal rationality. Therefore, the consciousness in general of any person is in principle interchangeable and substitutable with the consciousness of anyone else. If we were to look for an analogy in Plotinus, discursive reasoning most likely corresponds to consciousness in general, although Jaspers' immediate prototype is Kant's Verstand. Nevertheless, for Jaspers, in contrast to Plotinus' discursive reasoning or to the modern cogito, consciousness in general is definitely not only our self in any sense. It cannot even be said that we decide on this level. Spirit, Geist, represents a level of human consciousness distinct from the consciousness in general. While phenomena or objects in the world are given to us through consciousness in general, spirit interprets the reality in the light of ideas. Spirit, by means of its ideas, sums up phenomena or object into some kind of meaningful wholes. The spirit is the bearer of specific spiritual movements and contents which are a manifestation of a person's relationship to the overall meaning. This function of the spirit consists in uniting a multiplicity of phenomena into wholes and establishing an overall meaning is applied not only at the level of theoretical knowledge but also at the level of human action. Typical external manifestations of spirit are works of thought or art, social institutions, systems of norms or rules. However, the spirit itself constantly transcends all its manifestations and objectifications. It remains in a living movement. If we were to look again for an analogy of Jaspers' spirit in Plotinus, the intellective power or intellect of the soul would most likely correspond to it. What both clearly have in common is a relationship to ideas and totality. Nonetheless, Jaspers' spirit does not participate in the ideas present in divine intellect, but creates these ideas itself. Man becomes himself only at the level of existence. More precisely, existence is the human self in the proper and most essential sense. According to Jaspers, existence is only another word for selfhood, Selbstsein. Existence, unlike Dasein, is not simply given with our birth. To become existence is a human task, not part of human facticity or nature. It is primarily offered to man in the form of a possibility to be realized. Man is truly an existence only by becoming it himself. He either realizes or does not realize the existence, either gains or loses it through his own free choice and through his decisions in concrete situations. However prosperous we may be as a Dasein, however capable of even genius we may be on the level of consciousness in general and spirit, without existence it is as if everything is empty for us and without ground, because our being is inauthentic and false. According to Jaspers, this is the very core of human alienation. According to Jaspers, Plotinus lacks the consciousness of historicity. The world is deprived of its meaning as a unique place for the realization of existence. For Plotinus, there is no gravity of absolute decision in time. He does not know that unity of eternity and time and historical consciousness expressed by a paradoxical formulation, what is eternal is decided into time. According to Plotinus, the world is just a stage and life is just a role. There are only ascent and descent, the possibility of which is still open. Therefore, nothing in the world is serious for Plotinus, according to Jaspers. He only cares about the purity of the soul, which is fulfilled in inexpressible ecstasy. As Jaspers shows, achieving the true self for Plotinus coincides with the attainment of absolute calmness. Plotinus reaches that calmness by realizing that the soul is in its inner self inviolable, indestructible, and immortal. According to Jaspers, this definitive calmness, however, can feel like a kind of blissful death within this life. Thank you.
The title says of your story, a meta-ontological approach. What is exactly a meta-ontological approach? A meta-ontological approach of existence. To a certain extent, I understand for what Jaspers always wants to avoid, that is that he is a kind of Hegelian thinker. So one could say this is the subject. The existence is the subject, subjectivity. and marked by transcendental thinking and by thinking about itself as transcendental thinking. So, and laying a relation that to the absolute, that's speculative thinking. So you transcend from empirical thinking and transcendental thinking about experience to thinking the transcendence, and that is speculative thinking, speculative knowledge. So, what is Jaspers doing here when he talks about, or when you talk about a meta-ontological approach, not speaking about existence as a kind of ontological way of being? Is it a transcendental thought, or what kind of thinking is it when you think existence, and when existence is let's say, the character is characterized by reflexivity to a certain extent, to thinking about itself? What kind of thinking is it? And what is here meta-ontological?
You sometimes see the qualification meta-ontological to reflect the fact that the one is beyond being. And so existence ultimately for Neoplatonists, or Platonists that are start with Plotinus' basic approach, is not at bottom reflexive, but that would belong to nous and to intelligence, and that level has intelligibility. But yeah, so but I am curious about how the author would then apply this meta-ontological to Jaspers.
Analytic philosophy, we use the term meta-language for a language which talks about the object language. Will you agree that perhaps meta-ontological thinking is, thinking about ontology?
So in the context of Jaspers' thought, meta-ontology, I think you're referring to the Periac ontology, which he develops in the mid-30s. So he wanted to do this in direct opposition to pure ontology, because it's in the second or the third volume of his philosophy, he develops a critique of ontology that kind of anticipates Levinas's. So the idea is, I think it's partly also a response to Heidegger, the idea is that ontology brings everything into a unified, and Jaspers wants to say that we can't really think it as either being unified or divided. And so the encompassing is kind of prior to unity and division. So I think, and I don't know that he uses the word meta-ontology, but he definitely uses Periac ontology. And this is about the thinking of the encompassing, and it's an attempt to kind of avoid Plotinus' reduction of everything to unity and say, we must look at things beyond unity and division.
I wanted to ask about the insight here of our speaker, who says that transcendence doesn't involve a historical approach. For Jaspers, Jaspers says that Plotinus doesn't come into history and integrate history in his thinking, and it's a kind of flight away or a descent or an ascent. I wonder a lot about this question, whether it's just a different interpretation of history. I mean, Plotinus was teaching his students, he was traveling, he was learning, he was in the world. So he had an interpretation of history. I wonder if there's two different senses of what history is here.
How can you avoid, let's say, Jaspers does not want to see existence as an ontological concept, that means as a thing, and thinking about it is empirical thinking, and thinking about things and empirical thinking you cannot use for thinking existence. It's at another level, it's at the level of freedom. Kant would say ethics, it's very related to Kant. But then you get the other problem, that is, what kind of thinking is it that we think? How do we thinking about existence? That was the problem of Hegel, of course, and he therefore developed the concept of speculative thinking, speculative knowledge. When you do not positively develop that concept, where do you stay in thinking existence? Doesn't fall thinking in existence into a kind of irrational thinking? Perhaps then Kierkegaard or some people like that come up. Where the problem of irrationality is, I don't know whether you feel that, but that's what I want to ask you. The problem of irrationality is there. Ethical choice as irrational choice. Existence as irrational freedom. Where is rationality in this? At this level.
Here is a quote from, I mean, it's related to your comment and yours as well. The paradox of transcendence lies in the fact that we can grasp it only historically, but cannot adequately conceive it as being historic itself. So it's not historic itself, transcendence. It transcends history. It transcends existence with a lowercase e. The world of objectivity, it transcends that. However, when we try to think of it or conceive of it, thinking is basically constrained by subject-object dichotomy, whereas transcendence goes beyond that dichotomy. Reason does not actually, in the Kantian sense of the term reason, apply to transcendence, and therefore thinking about transcendence from a Kantian point of view will be, we won't say irrational, but non-rational. And in that sense, it will link with what you referred to in Kierkegaard.
One of the main things, so in Jaspers, is to go on about his periodic ontologies, one of the modes of the encompassing is reason, or Vernunft, right? And so here he's drawing from Kant, and Vernunft is this like drive for the unconditioned and the drive to bring unity. And so it's not, I think in German is different from English. So English doesn't have as many words for rationality and reason as German does. So I think sometimes you have to be clear whether we're talking about Irrationalität or Vernunft. So Jaspers comes up with the word Vernunft, which means like anti-reason or irrationality. And this is very different from Irrationalität, right? So in English, we don't necessarily make that kind of distinction. So for Jaspers, he very much thinks of himself as a thinker of reason, philosophy of reason. But what he means by reason is something very different from what we sometimes mean by reason. So nowadays, when we talk about rational and irrational, we talk about whether something's orderly or disorderly, right? Whether it's like in order or whether it's chaotic. But this is different from Jaspers' version. So Jaspers says reason is this drive to unity. It's the will to communication, to kind of bring together things which are initially different. And so every kind of discussion between people with different views is an enactment of reason, right? Because you're trying to bring unity. The tragedy or part of the problem here is that we can never find final unity. And so we're continually striving for unity, but this unity is always beyond reach. And so this is part of philosophy. Part of philosophy is always trying to communicate with what's different from yourself, but this communication is always failing. And so Vernunft, or anti-reason, or irrationality, is premature attempts to arrive at unity. So when people say, I have found unity, and this is clear, Jaspers says, and so for example, Marxism or psychoanalysis, we found the final answer. There's no more need to continue investigating. The only thing that we have to do is to continue filling in the answers because we already have found the ultimate source of unity. He says this is contrary to reason. This is what irrationality is. So that's kind of ultimately Jaspers' view of it.
Just to address the irrationality issue from the Plotinus perspective. So, I mean, in Plotinus, although there is this thing beyond intellect, right, the ethical philosophy is still very much rationalistic, right? So you are supposed to cultivate virtues of moderation and wisdom and justice, as you see them exemplified by Socrates and Plato's dialogues, and to even the very strict Socrates of the Phaedo, which preaches hating your body and really identifying with your soul. So even though there is something beyond reason, reason is still an essential part of getting there.
Jasper famously says that, you know, thinking about transcendence is a kind of unthinkable. And so this kind of remarks, you know, they show that there is pressure on the very concept of a reason, however you take reason to be. And so there is this this element, because you want transcendence to be not amenable to subject-object dichotomy at all, and simultaneously you want to think about it, and so you want to think about the unthinkable, and the unthinkability is, I think, puts some pressure on the very idea of rationality.
Two things that I thought of during this panel was, on the one hand, there's the recent research by Zeke Mazur on the Sethian Gnostic background to Plotinus, and which sees this ascent to the one in not so, as it were, not so abstract terms, right? He's managed to show parallels between Plotinus' ascent and texts from the Greek magical papyri and also Gnostic texts. So there's like this magical background to the ascent. It would be curious to see what Jaspers would have done with that, especially because it really brings out how polytheistic Plotinus is. And also, you know, there's been scholars working on Iamblichus and Proclus later that try to bring them closer to existential themes, and also the importance of individuality for them. So Edward Butler is an author who's emphasized how at bottom for Proclus what's important about unity is individuality, and that's what his polytheism is actually supposed to guarantee, this ultimate source for individuality, which would be these absolute individuals, which are the gods.